I think that if you outline as entrepreneurs, you take the time to outline your process from the get-go of the different tasks that you need to perform from a day in, day out basis, and take a hard look at them, and then ask yourself the question is, what steps can be removed or deferred, delegated to someone else potentially, or done in sequence and parallel, so that you can save time on the back end.
This is The Entrepreneur Way with Neil Ball. Unlocking the secrets of successful entrepreneurs 7 days a week. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Twitter at Neil D. Ball. Napoleon Hill said the power of the mastermind is the driving force. To discover how you can unlock the potential in your business using the power of a mastermind, go to mastermindunlimited.com. And now, here is your host, Neil Ball.
Hello, it's Neil Ball. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Entrepreneur Way. The Entrepreneur Way is about the entrepreneur's journey, the vision, the mindset, the commitment, the sacrifice, failures and successes. I am so excited to bring you our special guest today, Nick Snapp. But before I introduce you to Nick, I have a quote for you. Mary Astor said, "Once you start asking questions, innocence is gone." The Entrepreneur Way asks the questions, so we all get the insight, inspiration, and ideas to apply in our businesses. Nick, welcome to the show. Are you ready to share your version of the Entrepreneur Way with us?
Yes, Neil, I am ready. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, Nick. Thanks for coming on the show. In an era where overtime is expected and overwhelm is normal, Nick Snapp, productivity strategist and podcaster, combines productivity with purpose for entrepreneurial moms and dads who want their time back. He is the owner of Inspire Me Solutions, providing innovative coaching, training and consulting services for entrepreneurs and want-repreneurs. Nick has nearly 15 years of project management experience in the areas of manufacturing, construction and supply chain for mostly Fortune 500 companies. His faith fuels his love for people, culture and language learning, and his passion for working productively and living deliberately. Nick, can you provide us with some more insight into your business and personal life to allow us to get to know more about what you do and who you are?
Absolutely. My name is Nick Snapp, and I have a company called Inspire Me Solutions, and I'm also the host of the Make It Snappy Productivity Show, which, as you might be able to guess, is a little play on my last name. I figure people have been playing off my last name my whole life through grade school and everything, so I might as well make a brand out of it because there probably is a brand there. So I'm really into productivity. So in corporate America, I'm worked for a Fortune 500 company, a couple of different Fortune 500 companies as an engineer. I'm a mechanical engineer by degree, but I have an extensive background in capital project management and Lean Six Sigma process improvement methodology. So I like taking those methods and that way of thinking, the process-oriented way of thinking, and applying that to personal productivity. So that's what I love helping clients do from the perspective of how do you take those systems, how do you use data to drive decisions and help you with your personal productivity and your effectiveness. So that's a little bit about myself.
Mm-hmm. And how do you make money from what you do?
I do consulting. I do some project management consulting, and I also do productivity coaching and training and workshops. And then with the podcast, there's some opportunities that I'm currently working on that I'm very, very excited about, for creating products to help people with productivity issues that typically come up when you're a solopreneur or a small business.
Okay, so you mentioned Six Sigma there. What takeaways could you tell us about that would be useful for entrepreneurs in terms of Six Sigma? What things would be useful for them to know about that?
Sure. Well, Six Sigma is all about finding defects in your process. And Lean Six Sigma combines the best of both worlds between lean manufacturing, which was pioneered in Toyota or in Japan, with a Toyota company, and lean is all about the different forms of waste and how do you take waste out of your processes. So that can be applied to all different kinds of things in life. And so whereas there's waste in the form of human intellect as an example, there's waste for too much movement between processes. There's all different kinds of waste that we overlook until you apply. In my case, I like to apply engineering methodology and to look at those different items and the different ways that we're wasting time, momentum, whatever it is, and figure out ways to improve upon that stuff.
And what do you enjoy most about what you do, Nick?
I love it when someone comes to me just completely overwhelmed and distracted, and helping them through that process to figure out and really break down what's overwhelming them and what they're trying to work on and move forward down to their component parts, and taking those parts and providing very structured, process-oriented plans to move away from that and move forward. So it's almost like we have those aha moments in those discussions with clients.
And how would somebody know if they needed your services?
Well, when someone works too much, well, I shouldn't say that. When I help people get their time back.
Yeah.
So if you're not leaving work on time, or if you're putting in endless amount of hours as an entrepreneur, I believe we don't need to be working that much. I believe that there's ways that we can get around and hack through the system. From my perspective, I worked for corporate America for 14 years, and I found that I was becoming very adept at figuring out creative ways to cut through the nonsense and everything that goes around with corporate. And as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of things that we think that we should be doing, or that we're due to a myriad of different obstacles, that if we really break it down to what we need to do and what's really important for our business, then we don't need to be working so much. So I think that people are working excessive hours and are feeling overwhelmed and not spending enough time on what they believe is important, then I could help them out.
And what is it that drives you?
My tagline, if you call it, for the podcast and my business overall, is productivity with purpose. So I don't believe that we're being productive if there's no purpose behind it. So I look at the first step with any client is trying to figure out, well, really, what is your business and how did you envision it going before you started? What did you get into this thing for? What was your original reason? And once we get down to what the purpose of the vision, the business is, and what their vision for that is, then we can use productivity as a tool to move forward with that vision. So your question was what drives me, what keeps me motivated. When I can get clients back to that original vision, or even pivoting the strategy from where they're at to where they want to be, they light up, they get excited. And I love that feeling of seeing clients get excited to where they're actually using productivity as a tool to realize what they feel like their purpose and their passion is.
Mm-hmm. And do you find it's common that people's original vision of what they thought they were going to achieve and what they were going to get out of what they're doing and what they actually end up with is different?
Absolutely. Yeah, you just find yourself in the business day in, day out. You're in your business, but there's not a lot of time in some cases where you're working on your business. You take your eyes off of what you wanted to do and what you felt strongly while you started it, and you get into a new cage. Mm-hmm. You potentially broken away from corporate, and you feel that sense of freedom when you first started. And you had all these high expectations, the stage of unaware, incompetent sort of thing. Like you have all these great grandiose visions of what you wanted to do, and then all of a sudden you have this conscious incompetent state, and then you move into this flow where you know what's working, you're getting by, but it's not driving you anymore. It's a new cage. So you broke away from your original cage and you got into your new cage. Mm-hmm. So I think that if we could direct people out of that and really figure out what do we need to do to start making changes, and how can you use productivity to do things efficiently so you're not having to spend time doing the things that drain your energy, that you don't value. And I think that's key.
Yeah, so systemization and increasing productivity allows you to work on your business rather than in your business. I think that's the takeaway from that, isn't it?
I believe so. I mean, productivity is one of those words that comes with a lot of baggage. Like this, it's not very clearly defined. I remember I had a talk with the University of South Florida here in Tampa, and I asked the question on a survey with the students. There were 80 different students. What does productivity mean? I think 44 students replied, and I got 44 different answers. So I look at productivity as working on the right things. You know, it's this notion or this feeling that if I'm being productive, then I'm just checking things off my list all day. But you could be checking those things off your list all day, but you could be doing all the wrong things. So you're not being productive. Mm-hmm. If there's no purpose for what you're doing, then it's not productive at all. So I look at productivity as working on the right things. There's a young lady by the name of Amber de la Garza who calls it productivity is using your best time to work on your best activities. I think it's a pretty good description as well. Mm-hmm. It's how do you harness your full energy, your mindfulness, where your head's at any given situation, and leverage it to work on the things that are really driving you forward.
Yeah. So you obviously apply these productivity things and systemization in your own business. So how do you relax when you're not working in your business?
Yeah. Well, that's a really good question. I think that because of productivity, I go take a step back, I guess, when I first started this business, and the paradigm shift between working as an employee and as an entrepreneur, completely different. So as an employee, I could be completely effective and completely productive. But as an entrepreneur, it's all up to me. There's no accountability. Like I'm the only one that cares. So until I could set those systems up to where I could, as the productivity guy, actually be productive myself, I couldn't relax until I got that done because I really felt passionate about walking the talk. Like I couldn't sit here and work 60 hours a week and help people who are working that much. And I didn't want to be a hypocrite. So until I could set those systems up, then I had the chance to relax. So when I go off and relax, it's about, I'm a family man, and I really enjoy spending quality time with the family, because that's really why I did this in the first place, to be able to see them more. I was in some cases commuting 60 miles one way, and I'd leave at 5:15, 5:30 in the morning, and I wouldn't get home till 7 o'clock. And it was just this, I felt this a little bit more of a detachment because I just didn't have that quality time. And I didn't feel like our lives and our work should be set up like that. So I made it my mission to shift those tables. But spending time with the family, I'm an active guy. I volunteer. I coach basketball for an inner city organization called the Dream Center of Tampa Bay. I love working with kids and just helping be a mentor. And that's now I love to travel. I wish I could get over to the UK, but I haven't been out there yet, Neil.
Well, you should come over.
I would love that.
And do you have any entrepreneurial role models?
I do. I think that the classic productivity guy is David Allen, and reading Getting Things Done will change my life and will probably change anybody's lives that read it. It's the fundamental end all, not end all be all, but it's a very fundamental book when it comes to getting things done and being productive. But the other guy is Eric Ries. He does a book called The Lean Startup. I'm not sure if you heard of Eric's book or not.
Yes, I have.
But he's all about Lean Six Sigma, using those concepts in starting a business. Not so much for personal productivity, but how do you collect data and pivot and use those strategies for continuous improvement? How do you get away from vanity metrics and use tangible metrics that actually have value and use that data to drive decisions for your business? And how do you find that synthesis between what you thought you wanted your business to do and what actually works? So that's a book that's been pretty influential on myself. Or I guess your question wasn't about a book, but an entrepreneur who's been very influential on me.
Yeah, he's written quite a few good books, Eric Ries. And
absolutely.
I don't know about David Allen. I've not read his, but I'm sure it's very good. Nick, can we talk about the time before you were an entrepreneur? What difficulties did you have to overcome when you started your business?
My biggest difficulty starting my business was getting over myself. It might sound kind of funny, but I had been side hustling for several years and spinning my wheels. And I really had to look inside and get a true understanding for what were my intentions for wanting my own business. At first, when I had my entrepreneurial seizure, as Michael Gerber calls it in the E-Myth, we all, as a technician, we all have our seizures. The boss is telling us to do something, we don't want to do it, and we're like, no, forget this. We could do this better ourselves, and then we go off and do our thing. So I kind of got stuck in that hamster wheel for several years, and my intentions were like, I don't want people telling me what to do. I wanted to control, my destiny. And it wasn't until I really took a hard look within, after all these different opportunities coming and going, I struggled with this dichotomy between, do I want to start my own business or do I want to move my family international? I had a very strong desire to move my family overseas to a country that doesn't speak our language and get second language fluency and experience different cultures. That was very, very important to me. So I had this dichotomy between, hey, do I want to move my family? And I had all these different opportunities with my company to potentially move to Brazil. And I almost moved to Canada. I had some outside opportunities to move to Chile. And one by one, these things all just got almost miraculously vanished. It seemed like I was so close. And the last one was Uruguay. I was going to take a position as a manager of a port down in Uruguay. And at the very last minute, I didn't get the role. So I was like, there's something's going on here. I'm not looking at this right. My intentions probably aren't in the right place. So just through a lot of inward reflection and taking the focus off of really myself and what could I offer the world is when, and giving up the control is really when doors started opening up for me. So the biggest stumbling block was like, I'm going to do the best that I can with very low attachment on the outcome because I can't be in control of the outcome. And if I get redirected, I believe in God. If God redirects me, then I've got to be okay with it. And I took that mentality, and that's really when doors started opening up for me.
It's interesting that you say that. So your process of making that decision was really about them just not happening for some reason. So you sort of used that as an indication that you'd go and try something else. That's what you're really saying there, isn't it?
I did. Towards the end, I didn't mention it, but I had saved up. We were going to take a sabbatical. We were just going to take 2 years off, just get out of the States for a while. I was going to move my family to South America, and I'd saved up about a year to where we'd pretty much be okay without making any money and just get that experience. And then the opportunity to actually work down there, we went to Uruguay just to check out the country, see if it'd be a good fit for us from a safety perspective, amenities, technology, all the different things that we look for in a new home. My wife and I went down there, and I had an opportunity just kind of fall in my lap. So I was like, man, this is meant to be. I'm going to go do this. And when that opportunity fell through at the end, we took that money and we had enough to be able to start my business. And I'd always had the entrepreneurial bug inside of me. I started a lawn mowing business at the age of 12, where I used to have a three-wheeled or a tricycle with a cart that my dad and I built on the back. And I used to ride it around the neighborhood, and people would see me on the cart. That's the kid with the cart that's mowing lawns. And all throughout high school, I think the peak of my little lawn mowing business, I had 30 lawns a week, which was huge for a kid in high school. So I always had that, but I just kind of followed the standard path of go to school, get a good job, get a degree, get a master's degree, and move up the corporate ladder. And it took me about 10 years or so of pushing all those entrepreneurial feelings down that I realized that this isn't working. This isn't what I'm built for. But then I got kind of sidetracked by the international thing and these different opportunities coming up. So after I lost that opportunity in Uruguay, I woke up and I said, you know what? This is the time to do it. It's a leap. We wouldn't have had enough financial means to make it if I weren't making money with the business. But if it's not going to happen, then we'll find another way. Yeah. I have enough connections in the industry where I potentially could have got another position, and we had the faith that we'd go ahead and move forward and work it out.
Did you have any doubts that delayed you starting your business?
Once I made the firm decision that the focus is going to be on my business and not on international living, all the doubts went away. I set the date and I never looked back. I think that's in part with productivity. That's really what needs to be done. A decision needs to be made. And then how can you structure your life around what it is you need to do to be more productive in that area? And so for me, once I'm decisive and it's all go, and sometimes it's been to my demise. In 2013, I wrote this book. I was having our second child, and I said, you know what? I'm having a second child. We're building this nursery. We're putting this fancy crown molding and wainscoting, all these different things. I'm kind of good at it. So why don't we document this process and make this like training book or manual video on how to put a baby nursery together from start to finish. And that's going to be my product. And I'm going to sell that online. It's going to be great. I didn't do any market research. I didn't talk to anybody about it. And I just started doing it. I put my blinders on. It was going to be a 90-day project that turned into 13 months. So I'm that all or nothing. Like I get in and I go. And that's the biggest learning thing for me is I need to open myself up. And I think I needed to go through those processes, like the process of realizing that I have that tendency, and listening to the people around me and being open to give up control. Because for me, I think my entire career has been a little bit about control. And it wasn't until I was willing to give that up to where I felt like I could really be a successful entrepreneur.
And what mistakes did you make that slowed your journey?
The focus was just too much on myself. And it wasn't on how I could help people, how I could serve people. It was that I want to develop a business that I could run anywhere in the world, or I want to move my family internationally. It was, this is what I want. But I didn't put a lot of thought into what people needed and what skills I could offer the world. Once I flipped that paradigm, I was able to make a difference.
So what made you realize that you needed to switch the way you were thinking?
I think I'd just been beat up so much by continued failures of the opportunities coming and going, and me trying these side hustle endeavors like doing the nursery video training program and book, and just having just countless ideas that I'd tested out to some extent that just didn't seem to be working out because they were all focused on what's the quickest way to make $1. And that's not what being an entrepreneur is all about, at least not for me.
What are some of the things that you did before you started your business that'd be helpful tips to some of the listeners who haven't yet taken the first step on the entrepreneur way?
I think meeting as many entrepreneurs as possible has been the most helpful to me. When I was working in corporate, I didn't know entrepreneurs. I knew employees, and I talked to people about starting my own business. And they look at me like I had two heads, and it was I couldn't relate to the people that I was working with, but those were the only people that I was talking to. So I took the advice of my wife and people that are close to me, my friends, and actually went out and tried to make the effort to go out and meet other entrepreneurs. And once I did that, it really opened doors because I saw that I wasn't the only one struggling. And I got involved with the Tampa Bay Business Owners, which is a fantastic organization. And I got a coach. Another story that I had when I first got started is I was going to start a Lean Six Sigma consulting business where I was going to go into different factories and help them improve their numbers. Get their numbers up and add value and eliminate waste on a manufacturing level. That was the original idea that I had. I wrote a 40-page business plan to do that. And I got work 3 days after I quit. I went off to LA. I had a 4-week project. And I realized during that 4 weeks that, man, I can't be away from my family like this. This is just not what I envisioned doing. And had I not developed the skill before I started my business to give up control and be open to other opportunities, I wouldn't have had the wherewithal to get my own coach who helped me work through the process of, okay, what have I always been good at? What have I always received accolades for? And what am I passionate about that I could help the world with? And that's when productivity really bubbled to the surface. So I think that it's the advice would be that if you're thinking about starting your business and you have an idea in your head, but you haven't thought it through and you haven't talked to your market and networked with other entrepreneurs that could potentially be in your space or be your allies, then do that first and really think through if this thing is successful, and if you get what you want, which I did, I got work 3 days after I even started. What's that going to do to the big picture? Because it goes back to purpose, like productivity with purpose. If you don't have a purpose behind what you're doing, or your purpose is just to make money, what happens after you make all that money? Then what? You just quit and you go on vacation and have a good time. But then what happens when that gets boring? And I went through a process of thinking through those logical steps and got a very clear picture of how I wanted to spend my time, how I wanted to help people. And that's when I felt like I really started to make progress.
Yeah. I think the answer to that is to know your why, isn't it? If you know,
absolutely.
If you focus on the what or the how, that might not provide you with the why. I think that was a huge and very good point, Neil. Thanks. Yeah, that was a huge stumbling block for me, and not knowing my why, just thinking about the how too early. Yeah. You talked about, obviously, working in a corporate environment and taking that leap of becoming an entrepreneur when you're surrounded with people who only know the corporate environment and that's the way they see themselves staying. How did you find people's attitude to you when you told them about what you were trying to do? Did you find it was supportive?
No, I didn't. I found the complete opposite, actually. I felt like I distanced myself from people that were my friends at the time, or I thought were my friends, because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that didn't want to see me succeed because they had potentially their own desires to do something similar, but there was fear that took root. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't make it, then it was maybe like a reassurance that, hey, nobody can make it. So that was the sense that I got. So I got a lot of just resistance and questions and reasons for why what I wanted to do wouldn't work. Mm-hmm. So it really helped, honestly, it really helped me kind of become not selective, but it helped those true friends and those true supporters bubble to the surface and a lot quicker. And the people that were kind of draining my energy and taking away from what I wanted to accomplish, I was starting to distance myself from those people and draw closer to the people that were supportive of me.
Mm-hmm. So it's really, it brings to my mind the sort of crabs in a bucket kind of thing. Where those people just wanted you to sort of stay in that environment because they were in it. Is that the type of thing you're meaning?
That's absolutely correct. Yes. Yeah. In the corporate world, there's a few starry-eyed people out there, I guess, like myself, that want to do something different and didn't see this as the end game. And there's the people that just wanted to work their way up the ladder. And when I would refuse promotions, not refuse, but I wouldn't go for a certain job opportunity that I was very well qualified for because it was going to be more time away from my family and things like that, and less time to work on my side hustle. I got a lot of questions, and people just didn't understand that. So I think misery in some cases loves company, but entrepreneurship's not for everybody either. That's the other thing. So I think that if there's somebody that just doesn't relate to me in my situation, it's not always like a hater kind of situation. Sometimes it's just, hey, that's just not what they want. They're very happy where they're at, and that's perfectly fine. So, but I would say if I could look at the big picture, I think there are probably about 80% of the people that I was involved with in corporate didn't get it, but there was a smaller percentage, 20 or so, that were supportive. So
yeah. Another thing you've made me think about there is the law of association, which is another way of achieving your goals in life, where you surround yourself with the people that are doing the type of thing that you want to do and have the same philosophies as you have, which is, again, I think that's sort of what you did, isn't it, really? Because by the sounds of things, you sort of moved away from the people who were trying to hold you back and moved towards people who were more supportive of what you were doing.
It absolutely was, Neil. And it was kind of shocking because you hear those sort of things. I read a lot of books like you do, and you hear surrounding yourself with good people is key. But for me, just, I don't know if it's my own narcissistic way or whatever. I'm like, no, it's okay. That applies to all those other people, but not me. I could break through that. I don't necessarily need to surround myself with people that are better than me. I could be the best and mentor others or whatever. I don't know if that was really what's going through my head, but it was shocking at the difference that it made to me when I did start surrounding myself with people that cared and wanted to support and that were doing similar things to me, it gives you energy and it really vitalizes you. So you're never too good to support or to surround yourself with people that are better than you. I think we should always be surrounding ourselves with people that are better than ourselves.
Yeah. I recently read a great explanation of that, actually, which talked about it as being the accent of success. Because if you think about it, I mean, I'm in the UK and you're in the US. If I came to live in the US and I stayed there for a number of years, I would start to pick up the accent of Americans. And
yes.
If you think about it, if your mind works like that, then the people that you surround yourself with also affect your accent of your attitude to your life and your philosophies on life. So by changing the distance in yourself from the people who have the philosophies and the attitude that doesn't really fit with where you want to go in life, will actually aid you getting there. But an interesting thing is, and I never really thought of this, is that ultimately you could actually make that a temporary arrangement. And if you do decide if you actually consciously decide to go through that process, you can still obviously connect with those people in the future once you've achieved what you want to achieve. So it perhaps not quite as brutal as it might sound by doing that.
That's an excellent point. I never really thought about that either. But yeah, we have this tendency to want to mimic people that we admire.
Absolutely. It's actually a natural thing in us. And I think a lot of people don't realise that. And I mean, you can extend that even further and think about, if you think about that, when you watch the news, for example, all the negativity that you get on the news ultimately affects your thinking about life and the way things are. And if you take that out of your I mean, I don't watch the news, for example, because I just think it's full of, it's all driven by the marketing. It's all driven by marketing ultimately, because it's all about getting viewers and selling newspapers and things like that, which the headline sells the newspaper, and they've learned that giving people sensationalized headlines seems to get more viewing. So we get a lot more of that, but it's a disproportionate amount of negative news we get compared to positive news. And that can't be good for you ultimately. That's my belief.
I believe that as well. It kind of goes back to what's giving you energy and what's draining it from you. And then how can you, from a productivity perspective, that's one thing that I look at very intensely, is like, what are those activities that I'm doing that are draining my energy? And then how can I give those activities to someone else who potentially those activities could actually be vitalizing or giving people energy, because everybody's just wired differently. Whereas something could be draining me could be very, what's the word I'm looking for? Therapeutic to someone else. Or like you're saying, cutting out the negative things in your life, man, that's just so vital.
Nick, what I'd like to do now is just talk about the entrepreneurial journey a little bit more with you. Do you think culture is important from the beginning in a business?
Absolutely. It's most vital in the beginning. I'm working with a client right now where they're a startup and they have a lot of energy and momentum, but they're a little bit fragmented, not a lot of direction in some cases, and setting up a culture of understanding the results of your decisions and setting up processes that work from the get-go. I think it's of the utmost importance when you get started, because you can change culture over time after something's been started and rooted, but it's so much easier to take the easy route, not to be repetitive there, and start from the beginning, really having that vision for what you want your business to look like. And not only that, but how you want the people to interact with each other is most important at the front.
Mm-hmm. Knowing what you know now, is there anything that if you'd known it when you started out would have helped you to shortcut the learning curve?
I think that at the beginning, I didn't understand my processes. I didn't know what it would take, for example, to have a weekly podcast show. I just didn't know what that was like and the effort that it would take to improve. So knowing what I know now is now I know my processes. So I know what I needed to. I took the time to battle through at the beginning and understand exactly what I needed to do to get the tasks done the way that I wanted them to be done. But now that I've went through that pain and suffering, I've from a classic Lean Six Sigma process improvement perspective, I know what can be streamlined and how to get things done more efficiently. So I think that if you outline, as entrepreneurs, you take the time to outline your process from the get-go of the different tasks that you need to perform from a day in, day out basis, and take a hard look at them, and then ask yourself the question is, what steps can be removed or deferred, delegated to someone else potentially, or done in sequence and parallel, so that you can save time on the back end. And I think that if I were to go back and do it from the get-go, I would have outsourced right out of the gate. So I have a virtual assistant now. I have someone that does my podcast editing. I have someone that actually does some of the content management of my podcast. Actually in the process of completely outsourcing email 100%, to where I only get a daily summary each day, and I had to work through the process of making that work. But I would have made the investment up front so that I could get started a little bit quicker and not waste my time doing the things that drain my energy.
Mm. So you obviously you Lean Six Sigma is very influential in what you do, and you're an engineer. How much does gut feeling influence your decisions in your business?
It's surprisingly all the time. I think that, so that I know it's kind of counterintuitive, right? I think, and that's the crux of everything that I'm about is like, and I believe firmly that we should be using data to drive decisions. But the ideas in the past that we follow, the threads that we pull, those are all gut feel. I think that you need the gut feel on the onset to go down the path. But then once you're down the path, you need to have the wherewithal, like I didn't have when I was writing my book, to take the blinders off and collect the data and know who your market is and know what's working and what's not, and be open to pivot.
So your belief in your gut feeling, is that because you believe in the systems and the data that you've got and the processes you've put in place? Is that why you feel that way? Because obviously I get a mixture of opinions on this question, and
right.
Typically the answer I got from you wasn't the answer I expected, actually.
I know. Yeah, I mean, I think I think you need to go with your gut and what feels right. In many cases, you trust your gut because something's inside of you is telling you what. Well, I think a lot of times, I'm sorry to be stammering a little bit here, but I think a lot of times you inherently know what you want to do, but you're trying to prove it and make it exactly crystal clear of to prove to yourself that it's going to work. But you know that you could be a lot more productive, a lot more efficient if you just make a decision and go. And then find a way to recover. So like one of my favorite famous quotes is from Tim Ferriss, where he says the thing that you fear the most is the thing that you should be doing the most. And if you know that you should be doing it, you're fearing it, then define what the outcome is. What's the worst that could happen if it all blows up in your face, and then how would you recover if this particular idea, and typically they're not these like life-changing decisions that you're making. It's just something that you're avoiding because you're scared. So I think that if you're trying to base all your decisions, all the little day-to-day decisions on data, and it's going to take you 6 months to collect the data to prove it in advance, then go off and do the decision. Just have the wherewithal to pivot when it's not working. But know that it's not working with data, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you don't have to see the whole staircase to take the first step.
That's right. That's what I believe, yes.
Mm-hmm. Life is made of constant change, whether we like it or not. And many people say the only constant in life is change. Nick, how do you try to keep up with change?
I try to educate myself a little bit each day. I block out 15 minutes during my morning ritual to read and fill myself up with things that are going to help me as a person and in my business. So understanding the direction of various markets and the way that people are viewing business and new methodology and technologies. All this stuff is very, very important to stay current on, but not getting so wound up in the tools and understanding more the process, I think is the most important. So as things change, being open enough and listening to the team that you've built around you will give you the insights that you need to cope with the change. And like I've been saying since we've been talking, it's about being flexible and knowing when to pivot.
Yeah. What is your favorite book on entrepreneurialism, business, personal development, leadership, or motivation? And can you tell us why you have chosen it?
The most influential was a book that I read by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth Revisited. And it really set the framework for me to think about my business as a franchise model, even if I don't want to franchise my business, which I don't necessarily want to franchise it, but I do want to streamline things and think about all the different roles that I play and who is the best person to serve that role. Or is it even a person? Can it be automated? Those sort of things. So that I'm focused on the tasks that add the most value for me, or what I'm best at, the things that give me energy and all the things that we've been talking about. So I think the E-Myth Revisited is very, very good at breaking down the franchise model like McDonald's did and thinking of things in a process-oriented way. So that would be my choice.
Okay, it's an awesome book. I've read that. I can understand why you've picked it. Everyone, when you have a busy life, listening to audiobooks is a great way to expand your knowledge in the time when you may be doing other things, such as driving or when you are at the gym. We have a special offer for you of a free audiobook of your choosing. To choose your free audiobook, go to www.freeaudiobookoffer.com. As long as you've not already signed up, then you will qualify.
Excellent. Thank you.
Nick, we're now at the part of the show where I'd like to speculate about the future with you a little bit. What one thing would you do with your business if you knew that you could not fail?
You know, I still have those inherent desires to go work and live internationally, so I would take it international. I'd move my family to Spain and do things over there.
Okay. You'd have to learn Spanish then, wouldn't you?
I would. Well, actually, I do. My wife is Puerto Rican, so I can get by. Actually, yeah. One of the things that I did when I was talking earlier about Uruguay is I actually did have to interview in Spanish on Skype for 2 1-hour interviews. The most stressful thing I ever had to do in my life, but I somehow muscled my way through it.
Very good. What skill, if you were excellent at it, would help you the most to double your business?
Sales. I think as fundamentally as an engineer, we're not really trained in sales. I always felt like the soft skills served me best in my engineering background, but it's not natural for me, and I still have a lot of fear around the sales aspect. That I think that if I was more comfortable there, I could certainly double my business.
In 5 years from now, if a well-known business publication was publishing an article on your business after talking to your customers and suppliers, what would you like it to say?
Nick, help me get my time back. I really am passionate about people living life for the right reasons.
We're now at the part of the show where you share 3 golden nuggets with us. Nick, what is your favourite quote and how have you applied it?
Well, I think I gave it away earlier when I talked about Tim Ferriss. What we fear doing the most is usually what we most need to do. But that's my favorite quote. And it challenges me to think about, what am I avoiding right now? What could I be doing to move my business forward? But I'm not, because I'm scared. So I've applied that to many things. And usually it's around the realm of sales, where I'll reach out to somebody that I know has a need. And I'll take that leap and I'll ask the question if they want to get together and have a powerful conversation. And doing that more consistently, you get more comfortable with it. And the results are usually phenomenal. You know, I have a very powerful conversation with a client and we've had those aha moments. And I'm just so thankful that I took that leap. I think starting a podcast is another example of that. I didn't know how I'd be behind a microphone. I didn't know if people would listen, and I didn't really want to originally take that chance. But after trying it out, I fell in love with it, and I don't think I'll ever stop podcasting, as I'm sure you won't either, Neil, after
it's great
everything
fun.
you've been through with these 90 some episodes.
Do you have any favorite online resources that you can share with us, Nick?
Well, I believe that there's a resource that my wife and I just subscribe to called Prep Dish, and I'll give a shout out to Allison. I just had her on my show, but Prep Dish has been phenomenal about just taking the guesswork away from your meals. So she's, from a productivity perspective, I'm all about it. How do you go to the grocery store, put your list together efficiently, find the right deals, and prep all your dinner, your food in advance? I think it's been a great resource for me from a productivity perspective. From an online, I guess, business perspective, I think the guys at Asian Efficiency do a very good job of bringing together a community of productivity experts. And I was a part of that community, and I really gained a lot of knowledge and insight of the different tools and techniques that are out there from a productivity perspective. And I have a community myself. It's one of my favorite online resources, I call it. It's a very small, tight-knit community called POP. So this is kind of always funny when I say that I'm Nick Snapp, right? And I have this community called Productivity on Purpose, POP. So if I just had like an Uncle Crackle or something to put the whole thing together full circle, we'd all be in really good shape. But it's an online community where we share accountability with each other. You know, what are those things that we want to move forward? What do we need to hold each other accountable to? We make our goals public, and we talk through them, and we ask good questions and provide the support via Facebook. Facebook's an awesome resource.
Mm-hmm. What is your best advice to other entrepreneurs?
I think learn how to say no is the biggest piece of advice, and that was the hardest thing for me. Is people are always going to be buying for your time as an entrepreneur. There's so many millions of different things that you could be doing. But learning how to say no and being deliberate about when you do certain activities, when you do podcast interviews, for example, or when I meet with clients, I try to spend the best use of my time by batching things together. And if there's somebody buying for my time outside of the windows that I have available, then I just need to say no. And it's a tough skill to develop. The not to-do list is a lot harder than the to-do list.
Yeah. I've never made a not to-do list. That'd be interesting. Have you got a not to-do list?
I do have a not to-do list. Yes. Wow. And
so do you tick things off when you've not done them? It's mind-blowing.
It's a very good oxymoron. It's more of a bullet point guideline type situation, but a good gentle reminder that I look at of what I shouldn't be doing. So a good example of that is just not scheduling meetings during strategy time. It is and not to be on social media outside the windows that I have allocated for it. So I do things like use tools like self-control where you can disable the internet temporarily and things like that are on my not-to-do list.
It's actually a great idea having a not-to-do list. I like that. I might make one myself now.
I'd love to, send it over my way. I'd love to see it.
Everyone, if you didn't manage to get a note of Nick's favourite resource or his favourite books, then you can find the links on Nick's show notes page. Just go to the entrepreneurway.com and search for Nick or Nick Snapp in the search box. Nick, is there anything else that you'd like to add about your business?
Well, if you like podcasts, which if you're listening, you probably do, check out the Make It Snappy Productivity Show at makeitsnappyshow.com. We have new episodes every week, and we talk all about productivity tips and tricks, but then you get a little bit of an insight as to how I do my productivity coaching, because I actually coach clients on air. So it's very interesting dynamic when it comes to podcasting. So I'd love for listeners to check out the show and let me know what they think about it.
Thank you, Nick. Nick, it's been great hearing about you setting your inner entrepreneur free and you sharing your perspective on being an entrepreneur and your experience and applying the Lean Six Sigma and productivity to it. So thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
It's been fun, Neil. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Entrepreneur Way. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Twitter @Neil D. Ball.